You know when you have something really good and you start to address, like you put your marketing hat on and you start to think, well, where does this product belong? Remember now, we have consumers that pushing a grocery cart down the aisle. We may have a second and a half or 2 seconds for them to discover a product, depending on where it's placed. So we have to build products that work in every way.
You're listening to Food Tech Talk, supply chain insights from farm to fork, a podcast discussing the latest trends and technologies in the food and supplements industries, brought to you by Trustwell, featuring conversations with regulatory experts, quality and safety champions, and thought leaders across the industry. I'm your host, Katie Jones, CEO at Trustwell. If you're loving the conversation, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned to the end of the episode, where you'll hear our guests tell us their key food industry predictions for the next 12 months. All right, let's jump right in. We are delighted to welcome Michael Robbins, certified master chef, food innovator, and founder of Integrated Culinary Systems. Michael became the youngest master chef in America at just the age of 26 and has since built a remarkable career at the intersection of culinary excellence, product development, and commercialization. From leading innovation at major food manufacturers to helping brands bring responsibly delicious products and Crave Appeal, which we'll talk about, to market, Michael brings a rare blend of chef-driven creativity and real-world manufacturing insight. Today, we'll explore what it truly takes to create crave-worthy foods that are both responsible and commercially successful. Welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Becoming the youngest master chef in America is an incredible milestone. So how did that achievement shape your confidence, at such a young age, and then, shape your decision-making early in your career?
Yeah, well, so I think it definitely brought a lot of confidence to my career. But I think it also brought a lot of respect and for the discipline of just going through the process, So as a master chef, we talk about always being, a student every day. And I joke about it a lot. You sometimes focus on the things that you don't know about the industry and what you'd really like to learn more about. So it's just constantly striving to be disciplined, to be responsible, to represent the industry in a really good way. So I think that's kind of it. So you kind of look past the confidence pretty quickly and just keep trudging forward every day with it.
I love that. Always something to learn and stay humble. That's a great life motto. Now, you've worked across hotels, manufacturing, consulting, and education. What continues to excite you most about food innovation today?
Yeah. So, if you know me, you know that every day when you wake up, it's something new, right? It's something different that the consumer wants, and it's all about the consumer. So we're all about share of stomach. So we're trying to build products that we talk about Crave Appeal, that represent great frequency of purchase. And so I think that's the exciting part. And I tell my employees, I say, look, it's different every day. You never know what the industry is going to need on any given day, and you just have to be flexible. So, and consumers change a lot, right? We've seen trends and fads and diets and all types of things. So you just try to stay ahead of that curve, but I guarantee it's going to be different just about every given day.
Now, you mentioned Crave Appeal, and you also talk about needing products that balance both that, Crave Appeal and responsibility. You used that word earlier. How do you define that balance for your, in your career and then now for your clients when developing new food concepts?
Yeah, so the goal really is Crave Appeal. And the culture is responsible. And so that's really how we kind of balance that, right? So we have to be responsible in everything that we do, and we're constantly striving to build Crave Appeal. So as we build products for our clients or for any consumer, and when you have a good experience, when you have a great experience and you want to purchase that product again or revisit that restaurant again, when you have that experience. So that's kind of where the bar is set for us. And but being responsible I just think it's our culture. I think it's what we try to do whether if we're building a product and we have room where we could up the sodium, but do we need to? Maybe it's okay to not do that. Maybe it's better to be more responsible. It's an added bonus for the consumer to have something that's delicious with Crave Appeal, and then go, oh wow, look at the benefits of this product as well. So I think that's kind of the separation for us. I think being responsible is our culture.
So it sounds like, so when you have that first decision point where responsibility may challenge Crave Appeal, it sounds like maybe leaning on responsibility a bit more, or how do you look at that?
Yeah. So Crave Appeal is got to be the end game. So it has to be delicious. We say it all the time. Delicious sells. So yeah, I don't think we have to really. I think we've kind of trained ourselves to work within both of those, guardrails. Crave has to be Crave Appeal. No matter what we're doing, we always challenge ourselves. Is it good enough? And we question products that are out there that, we question that. Like, has somebody actually tested this product and thought that was good enough? Because it could have been a little bit better, but it may have taken, that's the hard part when you're doing product development. How far do you keep going with it? Are you willing to go back on the bench and rework something to make it better when you've put a lot of time into it? So I think, I think it's just got to be crave worthy. It has to make the consumer want to purchase this product.
So it sounds like you addressed a bit of this. So the pressure to get a product to market quickly being a time where brands may sacrifice those two things. So from your experience, where do most brands misstep when they're trying to make kind of better for you foods taste indulgent or have that Crave Appeal?
Yeah, I think I don't know if misstepping is the way we'd frame it, but I think we're the conscience for a lot of our clients when we develop. We try to guide them through that process to avoid mistakes. We talk about helping to, speed the commercialization process and to kind of streamline it. We have a lot of years of experience at doing that. So we try to get those guardrails in place early so that we can prevent, missteps, if you will, which results in a lower go-to-market cost, which is good for everybody.
If you're enjoying this episode, be sure to check out the Reconnect On Demand library. Every October, Trustwell brings together food industry professionals, partners, and customers for Reconnect. Our annual event focused on sharing best practices, exploring emerging technology, and building stronger supply chains. Now, the full library of sessions is available on demand, from expert panels to product deep dives and industry success stories. There's something for everyone working to improve food safety, transparency, and efficiency. Head to trustwell.com/reconnect to gain access to all of this year's sessions. Now, back to the show. Yes, definitely. And so we talked about in our prep about how you do come in and you help companies essentially restart the process because they didn't have the right steps in place. How can teams course correct maybe midway without having to completely restart the entire development process?
Yeah, so I think part of the beauty for us is that we spend a lot of time in food plants. So as we're developing products, and I've also spent a lot of time in marketing and, spent many years in Fortune 100 marketing. So you kind of understand all the buttons to press. So I think we just bring a lot to it. The challenge is sometimes clients come in and they don't have that direction, and they know they want to do something, and they're our clients, so we have to respect that. But if you allow us to integrate, which is my company, Integrated Culinary, if you allow us to integrate in the entire process, we can help with all of that and make it more directional.
There is at the base of this industry, right? It's food science, right? There are chemical reactions that create amazingly tasty things, but there is this balance of art, right, that goes along with it. So how does culinary intuition, right? So the kind of that art and gut feeling complement the food science side of it when you're designing products for consumers.
Yeah, that's the best part, really, because having the culinary knowledge and having the ability to build flavor systems and, create things that are delicious, all the science stuff you can apply, and we do every single day, right? Whether it's, pH modification or water activity, whatever we have to do to get to a specific shelf life or any of those parameters on the product development. Having the ability, and I say it all the time, it's usually one of the last things that comes along for a developer is the ability to really build complex flavors. And we hear that a lot. People will say that about our products. They say, wow, there's just layers and layers of flavors. And that's the fun part. We always kind of, we call it kind of coding our formulas because in the industry, there's a lot of times if you've got a good product, somebody's trying to reverse engineer that product or you're trying to reverse engineer something. And it's fun if you can build something that makes it a little bit more challenging for somebody to, crack that code and reverse engineer your product. And usually that's in the culinary discipline of building the complex flavors, building flavors that don't polarize, putting a flavor note in that's going to bring something really exciting. It's a top note, it's a brightness, it's a level of something. You can't really pinpoint it, but it doesn't stand out, but it brings a lot to the party. And that's, I think, where the culinary fun comes in.
Now, do you have an example of where that, chef-led creativity and insight changed maybe the technical direction of a product?
Yeah, we have probably lots of those that happen all the time. I think of a project we did for a client where we were working on it was a skewered protein item, and they really were set on having fresh fruit onto that skewer. And we knew that we would have an enzymatic reaction to that fresh fruit against the protein. And we tried to steer that away and prevent that. And it was a bit of a challenge because they were kind of set on having that. So, we kind of prevented the problem. And by heat treating the fruit prior to it going next to the protein, we were able to deactivate the enzyme and it solved the problem. So, that's the kind of stuff we do every day and we enjoy it.
That's cool. So giving the customer what they wanted, but still keeping it safe and fresh for the consumer. Yeah. So we also have talked a lot in the industry about the push for reformulation, right? Whether it's banned ingredients or just consumer preferences. So when you're reformulating products for whether that's cleaner labels or sustainability requirements or just cost pressures, which are very real, which elements should, from your perspective, never be compromised?
Flavor, right? It's flavor. All of those things have to come into play. The more information we know going into a project for a client, for a consumer, the better we can be, the more surgical we can be with our output. So if we know, the distribution, the packaging, if we know where the product's going to be run, what the plant capabilities are or limitations might be, that helps us a lot. But one thing you can never sacrifice is the flavor. And we do cost modeling every single day. It's very unusual for us to build a product where there's not some restrictions. I mean, we joke about it all the time in R&D. We say, hey, we could build this if we could, get the consumer to pay $45 for it. This would be great. But they're not. The price point's going to be much lower. And we have to be competitive. So we're constantly benchmarking and auditing categories to understand, the arena we're playing in and how we need to build a specific product.
So let's talk about the different channels, right? So we're seeing even a blending of these, right? With the grocerant, where you go to, the grocery store and you're so exhausted from the grocery shopping, you need to get dinner while you're there, right? But you've worked across all of these channels: retail, food service, consumer packaged goods. How does Crave Appeal differ from your perspective across those three, let's just say the three different channels?
Yeah, so I think it becomes a little bit more of a challenge with some of those channels to produce an item that, say, you have a finished meal that the consumer is going to now take from the grocery store home and, retherm it at home. There are some challenges to that, right? There's some degradation. and you have to understand how that food is going to react and build that into what you're doing. If you just look at the QSR category, they struggle with, now with DoorDash and take home food and delivery food. It's really difficult to get something that's crispy, crunchy, delicious. If it's a fried item, a French fry, that doesn't travel well. So those are those challenges for that set. So you just really have to look at each project and understand what are those challenges going to be, and address them. And we do. And sometimes you wish it could be a little bit better in the outcome, but you do the very best that you can, to make it the best experience you can for the consumer.
Yeah, this is where maybe even some innovations in packaging could complement, right, as well. So, what signals tell you when a product will translate successfully from one channel to another, right? We've seen a lot of this blending, to your point, direct to consumer, prepackaged foods. Now they show up, in the box, and because you have two minutes to heat up your lunch during the workday, right? And so, what signals tell you, hey, this is going to work now on a different channel?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything that says it's absolutely going to work, but when you have something really good and you start to address, like you put your marketing hat on and you start to think, "Well, where does this product belong?" We were looking at some systems last week, some coding systems, and they were delicious. And a couple of them were real standout items, and you start to think, "Wow, this has a lot of legs." But we have to get it. Remember, now we have consumers that are pushing if it's in retail, they're pushing a grocery cart down the aisle. We may have a second and a half or 2 seconds for them to discover a product, depending on where it's placed. Is it eye level? Is it foot level? Right? So we have to build products that work in every way. They work on the bench. They work in manufacturing. They work to a specific cost. They work for the plant. They work in distribution. Then they work if it's retail, they work there. And the consumer has to be able to get the product in the cart. They find the product, they get it home, and then it works at home. So there's a lot of little things that have to work. A lot of people get super excited when we build a product, and I still lose sleep at night thinking, okay, but we're not there yet, right? The consumer has to latch onto the product. They have to want to bring this into their lifestyle and use the product on a regular basis. We've all bought something and thought, well, this is great, and you bring it home and you use it. You don't use the whole product, and it goes into the refrigerator, and it migrates to the back of the shelf to be found 6 months later. And you go, gosh, maybe that wasn't a good thing, right? Compared to the product where you buy it, you use it, and you want to buy it again next time you're at the store or you're at that restaurant. That's the challenge. That's what we're after every day.
So we're seeing a lot of increase in regulations and some pending regulations even anticipated this year, one of which is front of pack requirements that will be put into place in the US. As we think about packaging claims, consumer messaging, all of those things that go into both the marketing and the regulatory requirements for a product, how early should those elements be integrated into the product development process?
Immediately, absolutely immediately, at the very beginning. Those are the questions. We have a questionnaire that we send out with projects, and we need to know all of those things. Everything from nutritional claims, exactly what regulatory agencies are going to be involved in the claims that you want to make. It's absolutely critical to know all of that going into it. And those things are changing fast, so you need to stay ahead of kind of what's coming down the pike, so you can address it before it even gets there. Because sometimes by the time you develop something, things have changed, and then you have to go back and rework it. But it's really our job to understand a lot of that, and what's used in an ingredient to maybe make that ingredient that's going to become a problem that may have to be declared at some point. I think that's our responsibility to stay on top of that for our clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned this already, the risks of change in the development process, right? Getting to the end. But what other risks arise when those elements are treated more as an afterthought or tried to, be addressed at the end of the process?
Yeah, well, a lot of times it's if you've done your homework up front, you can eliminate some of those risks from happening. But there's things like shelf life issues that we build a product that consumer or our client wants an extended shelf life. And if we're either doing real-time studies or we're doing some type of accelerated study that is really kind of modeling and making a lot of assumptions, because we may be able to build something with great food safety, but then there's sensory issues that are maybe a little bit unforeseen over a period of time.
So, speaking of consumers, what role does consumer testing play in validating that, Crave Appeal versus the, internal confidence or kind of the trend-driven assumptions, right? So, like there's lots of, you're monitoring social media. We talked about how, I think this year may be the year of fiber, whereas last year may be the year of protein, right? But like, how do you then really put the rubber to the road with the consumer testing?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a tough skin in this business, right? So you develop a lot of great products that you think they're going to be great. Um, but I need to hear from the consumer. I need to understand that this really works for them. It's what they want to be buying. It's what they want to be eating. Read the room, right? So, yeah, it's pretty important. It's just like consumer data, scan data. We put products into retail. I want to see scan data. I want to understand. That's why some of the club stores are so much fun, because they know their members and we get great data from them, right? They know where the products are going. So yeah, you really, it kind of goes back to like the chef. A good chef will watch the plates coming back to the kitchen, right? You put out a great meal, but go stand by the dish machine and watch the plates come back and see what consumers are really eating. It'll tell you a lot.
That's interesting. Yes. And those club stores also have, all the great samples, right? So, they can get a lot of a lot of the real-time feedback as well. So as you look ahead, what emerging ingredients or techniques or, behaviors, let's say, do you believe will redefine that, responsibly delicious foods?
Yes, I think, and we're tuned to, it's the first of the year, so all the new trends are out, right? And so it's kind of fun to see it. But we have a more educated consumer, and they're getting smarter, and they're getting more cultured, and they're getting more global. So we're going to see more global influence, right? That's the thing about being in this business, is you realize how small you really are, because you think you know a lot, but there's a whole world of food out there that we don't know. So as things cross borders and people travel and they want to try new things, so I think we'll still see a lot of global influence. Health issues and concerns are going to continue to move and continue to change. If you look back, through my career, all the things that we chased that are not even important anymore. GLP-1, right? It's a whole new thing for consumers. That's something consumers have been looking for years. Just a way to be able to, have their body react in a certain way that would do that. What all the GLP-1s are doing, and so with that comes consumers that will be eating less. And with that, we'll be getting less nutrients. So how do we fortify the foods? So it's just constantly being back to being responsible. We have to be responsible. We have to build foods that are going to be good for we want to keep our consumers alive as long as we can, right? So I think that's it. We will continue to try to stay ahead of the curve. You always want to, drive innovation and have the best new thing. But and then you have to remember your clients, right? Who the consumer is, right? And what those palates are, and what their palate is, what they like to consume, all of that. So that gets back to the everyday changing in our business, and trying to stay ahead of it.
I love the nod to global influences. I have a rule when I travel: I never eat at chain restaurants, and that's so that I can, experience something that I can't at home. And there's, comfort to that, and sometimes, there's just necessity, and you have to, right? But But I think it's so important, especially as you travel internationally, just to immerse yourself in the culture and the food, which is so much of a culture, and really experience that.
Yeah, it's best to, get out of the big cities. And that's what I want to do. I want to go eat what the locals are eating. What are they really eating here, right? And it is fun sometimes to go try a chain abroad and just see, because there's a lot of regional variations that have to be done. Just look at our country, right? I mean, you'd be hard pressed to put out a product for one region of our country and think that the palate would be the same all over our country, right? If you put out a chili product, and that's going to be different whether you're in Cincinnati or the Southeast or the Northwest. You may need 4 or 5 SKUs to fulfill that need for consumers. And that's just our country. So when you think of that abroad, it gets pretty vast.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. So we'll close our podcast out with just a few closing questions. So what would you look out over the next 12 months? What's your prediction? What's your food industry prediction for the next 12 months?
Yeah, well, I think you nailed it with fiber, right? I think that's going to be important. We've got some regulatory stuff to get through with colors and things, and just increasing responsibility. The consumer, as I said, is getting more educated. So it's going to be a lot more of that. Just be responsible. Just stay on top of that. Keep that as the culture. And I think you're going to do just fine.
All right. Our last question for those young chefs and food scientists listening now, entering the industry, what mindset do you believe will matter more than any single technical skill?
Yeah, be patient. Just be patient and be persistent, right? Set the bar high. If you continuously getting over the bar, maybe move the bar up a little bit, but just be patient and be persistent, and it'll all come.
I love that. Michael, thank you so much for being on the show. I've learned a lot. I need to get down to your kitchen. I raise my hand for participant in consumer testing in the future for anything that you're cooking. So, Michael, thank you so much again. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you for joining us for another bite-sized nugget of food tech talk, supply chain insights from farm to fork. Make sure to subscribe. And if you love the podcast, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about TrustWell and request your free demo of our technology platform that connects food formulation, products, nutrition analysis, and compliant labeling with traceability, recall readiness, and supply chain transparency, please visit us at www.trustwell.com and click Get Started, or click the link in the show notes to learn more. Thanks for listening.